In this video, I'm going to be giving you 10 of my top tips for WWE 2K22's GM mode, aka MyGM. These are some extremely useful tips for beating the AI on the hardest difficulty, or for beating your friends as well. Some of the tips are more simple, some of them are definitely lesser known tips, and tips 9 and 10 are particular favourites of mine, so let's get into the video right now. Okay, so tip number 1, when drafting and when paying special attention to the class that you're selecting, i.e. are you selecting a fighter or a bruiser or a cruiser or a giant or a specialist, try to draft more than one of the same class and the same role. Now, I've just gone through the classes there, and the roles are the green and red icons. They mean fan favorites or rule breakers. They, in real life, mean heels and faces. To keep things simple for the videos, I'm just going to call them red and green, alright? And just to clear up something else from the last video, because people were a bit annoyed about the red and green thing, they were also especially annoyed about the fact that I was butchering the pronunciation of some of the fighters' names. I do apologise, I'm not very good at pronouncing names. Anyway, let's say you have a perfect red and green fighter and bruiser matchup. Well, you know what's better than one of these matchups from your draft? 2 of them. Maybe even 3. Not only does this give you 2 or 3 perfect rivalries to start putting on your early cards, it gives you future rivalries too. Maybe even a perfect tag team rivalry. As rivalries go stale as you progress throughout a season, it's really good, if you can, to have future rivalries planned from the start. What I did in my first test save was I had a red bruiser and a green bruiser, a red fighter and a green fighter, and that's great for the first rivalries, but once that first rivalry dies out, you then don't have a second fight that you can make after that. You have to change the roles of 2 of the fighters, and that's a bad use of time if you can get away with it by doing something else, such as following tip number 1. Tip number 2, don't overspend on your earliest couple of show cards. When you're fighting in small venues, you're going to be missing out on the lucrative form of income, which is ticket sales. You're also not going to have that many fans, and fans also help you to bring in revenue in another form. So stick to putting on good matches between good roles, good classes, and throw in a title fight or 2. Maybe a tables match if you're feeling a little bit freaky. Make your money early, I mean in the first show, the first couple of shows, and then pump it into generating fans later on. Tip number 3, when picking which venue you're going to fight in, always look to prioritize the biggest possible venue due to the fact that ticket sale revenue is so important. The only time that I won't fight in the biggest venue I can afford is if I'm struggling to put on a great card and I'm struggling for show bonuses. If I have a number of bonuses met elsewhere, I will sometimes sacrifice a bonus on the venue just to ensure more income. Yes, hitting these bonuses is important for fans, but especially in the earlier parts of a save, you need to be racking up money as well. So the venue is definitely a place to sacrifice those bonuses as long as you've got the bonuses coming in other ways from good fights and from good rivalries. Tip number 4, don't be scared to pick up a super cheap free agent. In one of my saves, I signed a fighter for $6,000 on a 10-week contract. I gave them a power card to turn them into a permanent sign-in, and then I put them in a tag team match paired with a popular fighter versus one other popular and one less popular fighter. I repeated that tag team fight, and then I put my cheap fighter into a self-promotion promo. It only took around 8 to 10 weeks before my 40 popularity fighter became a 70 plus popularity fighter, and her promo skill also went from a low number all the way up to 5. By the end of the season, she was a total beast. An incredibly cheap one too. For this, just make sure you utilize the tag team match with a popular partner trick, and ensure the matchups are perfect too, e.g. 2 red bruisers against 2 green fighters. Tip number 5, always order your show with the fight you expect to be the worst in the middle of the card. This would usually be a fight between 2 less popular wrestlers that don't yet have a rivalry, but it can be the perfect place to start a new rivalry. Also, try and always keep these as like a normal fight type. Don't throw them in a tables or a tables, ladders and chairs or any other form of fight. Just keep it as a normal fight, because you want to keep this fight as a more quiet, a more cheap, and just a easier fight for fans to watch rather than a super engaging one. Tip number 6 is to try to avoid using the advertise promo, especially with fighters whose popularity you're trying to build. It really doesn't bring in that much money, usually $10,000 to $20,000, and it's guaranteed to lower your fighter's popularity. You're better off sacrificing that small amount of cash and getting them to do a self-promo or a call-out or even charity work if you have a bit of money to spare. Charity work brings in new fans, but costs $10,000. The exception to these promos would be if you have someone that is extremely popular, but you can't fight them that week for whatever reason, and you don't need to rest them, of course. Tip number 7 is don't sign legends for the sake of it. If you build your fighters up well enough, then you'll create some legends of your own, even if they don't get the official title, and you won't have to spend millions of dollars across a season in renewing the contracts of multiple legends. Only sign a legend if you absolutely need one, though I would say you probably do need one, especially if your starting draft didn't work out perfectly. Tip number 8, in the early stages of the game, focus on 2 things. 1, building up rivalries, and 2, making money. If you can build great rivalries quickly, then you're guaranteed to put on good cards, and good cards bring in fans. If you're already bringing fans in at this stage, you don't need to overspend on being creative with the match types. Use normal matches, table matches, title fights, run-in, and tag team matches to vary things up. To build great rivalries early, you need to draft well. Write down who you're drafting, what classes and roles they're in, and draft wrestlers with a high stamina count. You don't want to be resting people on your roster early, so this is a very underrated statistic to look at. Tip number 9, this is a rivalry trick. Let's say you have a level 3 rivalry running between a champion and their rival, and another wrestler on the roster suddenly wants a shot at the title. If you give in to their demands, it does 2 things. Firstly, it will raise their morale because you've appeased their demands, but it runs the risk of ruining the rivalry that you've already built up between the other 2 fighters. So how do you fix this? Well, firstly, you do make the fight. You schedule the champion to fight against the wrestler that requested their title shot, and you make it a title match. Then, what you do is you schedule a run-in on your champion from their existing rival. This will help keep their rivalry going, it might even strengthen the rivalry, and it will result in a disqualification too. The disqualification means the belt doesn't change hands even if the challenger is victorious. That's called hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Tip number 10, the final tip in this video. Unless you're at WrestleMania, the last pay-per-view of the season, do not put multiple level 4 rivalries on the same card, even if it's a pay-per-view. Unless you've somehow got 4 or 5 level 4 rivalries all built up, or if you've got some level 4 rivalries that run the risk of going stale because they've been active for too long, in which case you could maybe put 2 on. The reason for this is because your ongoing shows rely heavily on show bonuses which need active level 2 and level 3 rivalries. And also, if you put a level 4 rivalry on at pay-per-view, the rivalries will end. So all of a sudden you'll go from having a load of big rivalries to no rivalries at all. Level 2 and level 3 rivalries will still do extremely well at pay-per-view, meaning your show performance bonuses will be good, they'll build up to higher level rivalries too to help you maximize future bonuses, and they'll allow you to still have active rivalries going into your next set of shows before your next pay-per-view. You don't want a pay-per-view with 4 fights that are all level 4 rivalries until you hit WrestleMania. So there it is, 10 tips for WWE 2K22's GM mode. Did I miss anything? Do you have any other top tips of your own? Please do share them in the comments section below. If you found this video interesting or helpful, then do hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel as well if you want to stick around. Thanks for watching.